When I look at Jesse Pinkman's journey, I don't just see the story of a criminal. I see a tragic chronicle of how, step by step, a human soul can be systematically destroyed. And in this video, I'm going to show you the evidence for that. We'll talk about psychological distress, learned helplessness, and childhood emotional neglect. In other words, as it's trendy to say on YouTube now, we'll analyze the iceberg of Jesse Pinkman's soul.
What?
To understand how Jesse became so vulnerable, I want to start with a concept that I believe is the key to his entire tragedy. In psychology, it's called childhood emotional neglect, or CEN for short. I want you to understand, this isn't about physical abuse that leaves bruises. It's about the absence of something invisible but vital. It's when parents consistently ignore the emotional needs of a child.
Well, that's good. Feedback's important.
It's key, I think.
Imagine, a child comes to share his joy, and in return, indifference. His achievements go unnoticed, his fears are dismissed. Children who grow up in such an atmosphere carry that wound for life. I believe this concept of childhood emotional neglect gives us the perfect starting point for understanding Jesse Pinkman.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Jake.
His psychological trajectory, in my view, begins with an existing vulnerability born from parental emotional neglect, a void perfectly and tragically filled by a master manipulator.
Yo, you wanna go shopping? Go do it yourself, all right? I got plans.
Smoking marijuana, eating Cheetos, and masturbating do not constitute plans in my book.
I don't see clear evidence of overt abuse in his past, but I see a history of deep emotional neglect and disapproval. Notice how his parents are entirely focused on their respectable younger son, essentially writing Jesse off. Despite this, I see an innate decency in him. Remember how he dutifully cared for his terminally ill aunt? To me, this detail reveals his true character before Walt's deeper corruption touched him.
Bitch, what the hell's wrong with you? A wire.
I believe it's this parental rejection that breeds his low self-esteem and desperate need for approval and a positive father figure. This is the original wound that makes him uniquely susceptible to manipulation. Walter White steps into this void not just as a partner, but as a surrogate father. And this dynamic, as I see it, becomes toxic and codependent from the very start.
Shut up!
Walt's relationship with Jesse is not genuine mentorship, but in my opinion, a classic abusive cycle of love bombing and devaluation. Look for yourself. He offers praise and protection, only to tighten control.
What have you got in your life? Nothing. Nobody. Oh, wait, yes. Video games and go-karts.
And becomes cruel or dismissive when Jesse shows independence or earns respect from others like Mike.
Kid, just look out for yourself.
This dynamic, to me, is a textbook example of how a narcissistic abuser finds the perfect supply. Jesse's problems with his parents and his desperate need for family make him an ideal target for Walt's projection and control. Walt doesn't just manipulate Jesse. I believe he reshapes his reality, positioning himself as the only person who never gave up on him. A deeply insidious distortion of the truth.
Stop lying!
I'm not lying. I'm not lying. Just listen to me.
Walt systematically sabotages Jesse's attempts to build his own life or family, interfering in every relationship because in his abusive mindset, as I see it, the rule is, if Jesse can't be mine, he'll be no one's. This pathological bond explains why Jesse stays loyal for so long, even against his own interests.
You don't have to do this.
For me, the murder of Gale Boetticher is the single most defining traumatic event for Jesse. I believe it inflicts what psychology calls moral injury. This state differs from post-traumatic stress disorder, and in my opinion, explains his subsequent self-destructive spiral far more precisely. Think about it. Before Gale, Jesse's involvement in violence was mostly limited to self-defense or confrontations with other criminals who posed a direct threat, like Tuco or Crazy 8. These acts didn't shatter his inner self. Gale, as we all saw, was innocent in the context of their conflict. A kind, slightly eccentric man who posed no direct threat to Jesse. I'm convinced that forcing Jesse to execute him was a calculated, manipulative act on Walt's part, done to save himself. The result is not just fear, but a deep sense of guilt, shame, and an identity crisis. Remember the scene in the Narcotics Anonymous group. Unable to confess to the real murder, Jesse turns to an allegory about killing a problem dog.
Killed a dog?
He rejects the therapist's platitudes about self-acceptance with an agonized outburst. Listen to his words.
So no matter what I do, hooray for me because I'm a great guy. It's all good. No matter how many dogs I kill, I just do an inventory and accept. I mean, you back your truck over your own kid and you accept? What a load of crap.
Hey, Jesse.
To me, this speech is a raw outpouring from someone suffering from moral injury. He's not just sad or afraid, he feels he's become a monster. His attack on the group leader reveals his core conflict. He knows what he did is unforgivable by his own standards, and the idea of simply accepting it feels like a grotesque lie. His final admission, that he came to the group only to sell the meth, is, in my view, a desperate attempt to align his actions with the bad guy identity, because the cognitive dissonance has become unbearable.
Why I'm here in the first place is to sell you meth.
To better understand what's happening to Jesse, I delved into the psychology of this phenomenon. The essence of moral injury research, first formalized by psychologists like Brett Litz in 2009, is the identification of profound psychological distress that follows perpetrating, failing to prevent, or witnessing acts that violate deeply held moral beliefs. I want you to understand, this state is characterized by feelings of shame, guilt, disgust, and anger. Unlike PTSD, which is rooted in fear.
Jesse? Who is it?
Researchers have worked with military veterans using qualitative interviews and specialized measures such as the Moral Injury Event Scale to study groups exposed to potentially morally injurious events. Findings have shown that moral injury is a distinct phenomenon that strongly predicts depression, suicidal ideation, and social withdrawal. I believe Jesse's state after killing Gale, his self-hatred, his attempts to rid himself of money, and his subsequent self-definition as a bad guy is a perfect clinical illustration of these findings.
What happens now? I'll tell you. What happens now? Your scumbag brother-in-law is finished. Done.
I believe Jesse's enslavement by Jack Welker's neo-Nazi gang is the culmination of all his trauma. It pushes him into a state I'd call learned helplessness, where his will to resist is completely extinguished. Think about what he's been through. After years of Walt's manipulation and witnessing horrific events, Jesse is already in a fragile state. His captivity is not just physical imprisonment, it's psychological torture designed to break him and turn him into a compliant tool. Remember the flashback in El Camino. Todd takes Jesse out of the cage to help dispose of a body. Jesse finds a gun and has a clear opportunity to kill Todd and escape, but Todd, in his sociopathically casual way, starts talking about ordering pizza, and Jesse's will just snaps. He lowers the gun. When Todd asks what kind of pizza he wants, Jesse, completely defeated, mutters one word.
Pepperoni. Pepperoni. Sure. Classic. I like that too.
To me, that word is the ultimate manifestation of learned helplessness. It's not a choice. It's the absence of choice. He's been conditioned to believe that resistance is not only futile, but will lead to worse consequences. The prospect of a small, primitive reward for compliance outweighs the possibility of freedom, because his mind no longer believes freedom is attainable without catastrophic loss.
I know this isn't personal.
There was a classic psychological study on this. The essence of the learned helplessness experiment conducted by Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer in the 1960s, is the study of a state in which a person or animal forced to endure unpleasant, inescapable stimuli loses the will to avoid subsequent negative circumstances, even when escape becomes possible. They simply stop trying to gain control. How did it work? There were 3 groups of dogs. Group 1 could stop electric shocks by pressing a lever. Group 2 received the same shocks, but had no control over them. Group 3 received no shocks. Later, all were placed in a box where they could easily avoid shocks by jumping over a low barrier. The results showed that dogs from groups 1 and 3 quickly learned to jump over. However, dogs from group 2 simply lay down and whined, passively accepting the punishment. I believe Jesse in the Nazi camp after Andrea's murder is the perfect human analog to these dogs.
I killed her and it was me. I got her back up.
Jesse, look at me. Look at me. You didn't kill anybody.
I loved her more than anything.
In my view, Jesse's romantic relationships are not just side plots. They are his failed attempts at redemption and human connection, systematically destroyed. And the resulting grief, as I see it, is used to deepen his self-hatred. His relationship with Jane Margolis I would characterize as passionate, though chaotic, and self-destructive love. 2 wounded people finding an intense connection. Walt, seeing Jane as a threat to his control over Jesse, lets her die. That guilt becomes a lever Walt uses for years. The trauma is so deep that Jesse repeatedly calls her disconnected phone just to hear her voice on the answering machine.
Hey, if you're trying to sell me something, I've got 4 little words for you. Do not call list. However, if you're cool, leave it at the beginning.
To me, a torturous ritual of unprocessed grief, Andrea Cantillo and her son Brock, I believe, represent for Jesse a more mature, stable, and redemptive future. She is his chance at the family and normality he so craves. He tries to protect her by breaking up with her, knowing his world is toxic.
Whatever it is you had to do with my brother's killers, I don't want to know. But you gotta tell me one thing. Is someone gonna come looking for this?
No.
Yet escaping his orbit is impossible. Walt poisons Brock to manipulate Jesse, and Jack's gang kills Andrea to punish him. Jane's death plants the idea in him that his love is destructive. Andrea's death proves that even his attempts at redemption and protection are destructive. I believe these 2 events together create an inescapable psychological trap. If both his self-destructive passion and his attempts at responsible love lead to death, then the problem must be him. He is fundamentally toxic and undeserving of human connection. When I analyze the end of Jesse's path, I see that faced with the unbearable cognitive dissonance between his innate morality and the monstrous acts he's been forced to commit, his final psychological defense is to reject his identity entirely.
No! No!
He fully embraces the bad guy label. Look, throughout the series, I observe a conflict between Jesse's actions and his conscience. I believe he is, at his core, a man with a moral compass who is horrified by the consequences of his work. After the moral injury of killing Gale and the repeated traumas that follow, this conflict becomes unbearable. The mind seeks resolution. His statement to Walt is, to me, the culmination of this inner struggle. Having heard in rehab about the concept of self-acceptance, he twists it into a dark mantra. In his confrontation with Walt, Jesse finally articulates his new, broken identity. Listen to what he says.
It's all about accepting who you really are. I accept who I am.
And who were you?
I'm the bad guy.
I don't think this is a moment of self-empowerment, as it might appear. To me, it's a declaration of defeat. It's the only way for his psyche to reconcile the good man he was with the killer he became. If he's simply the bad guy, then his terrible actions are no longer a source of inner conflict. They're just an expression of his nature. I see this as a tragic, protective shell built from guilt and trauma, the final psychological cell constructed around him before he ends up in a physical one. This acceptance of a negative identity, in my view, is the final stage in the destruction of Jesse Pinkman's soul.
I was thinking about that thing you said about the universe. Going where the universe takes you. Right on. I think it's a cool philosophy.
I was being metaphorical. It's a terrible philosophy.